Norman Lamont, thanks for joining me on UpFront. Theresa May, the British Prime Minister, leader of your party, the Conservative Party, called an election she didn't need to, lost her majority in Parliament by doing so, and undermined her negotiating position on Brexit. She's now behind Labour in the polls. More voters than not say she should resign. 60% of her own party members say she should quit. Do you think she should stand down?
No, I don't, because no one else won the election. Jeremy Corbyn didn't win the election. He's over 50 seats behind the Conservatives. And the fact is that the government is able to put together a voting majority in the House of Commons. The constitutional position is quite clear. If you can command a majority in the House of Commons, then you have the right to form a government. And I believe she will do that. I think it's in the interests of the country that she should do that. There's no alternative available.
Well, we don't quite yet know whether she can command a majority in Parliament because she hasn't yet done the deal with the Democratic Unionist Party, the Northern Irish Party that she wants to prop her up. But surely you would accept she's had her authority undermined. She's come out of this election undeniably weaker. You famously, scathingly described another Conservative Prime Minister, your former boss, John Major, as in office but not in power. A lot of people are applying that description of yours today to Theresa May, who's trying to lead a minority government. She's in office but not in power. That's true, isn't it?
Look, nobody is saying that the election was anything other than a very poor result for the Conservative Party. Theresa May herself is saying that, accepting the responsibility for doing that. But nonetheless, she is the leader of the party. I think to change the leader of the party now would simply be to pile on the chaos on top of a situation that has quite enough uncertainty. This is an extremely serious situation, and we need a government. The country has to be governed, and this is the best alternative that is available.
Against all odds, the Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, did increase the Labour vote share by the largest amount, I think, since 1945, running on a clear anti-austerity platform. Theresa May's former Chief of Staff and new Chief of Staff have both admitted that public anger over austerity measures was one of the big factors that cost the Conservatives their majority. You were one of the biggest supporters of Conservative austerity measures. Do you have any regrets?
I think austerity, I mean, they're quite right that austerity was an issue in the election, but austerity is not a choice. It's not unavoidable. Call it living within your means. You can't spend money that you haven't got. The truth is that Britain still has a serious problem of indebtedness, still has a problem of a largish, although much reduced, fiscal deficit. I think one of the weaknesses of the Conservative campaign was that the Conservatives did not explain why restraint on public expenditure was necessary. This isn't something we do in order to inflict misery on people. It's something that is absolutely necessary in the interests of the country and in the interests of our children, that the indebtedness of the country should be reduced.
OK, let's talk about Brexit. Norman Lamont, today the UK is a very divided nation under a fragile minority government facing a potential political crisis days before Brexit negotiations with the EU are set to begin. Given the relative stability that the UK enjoyed before last summer's EU membership referendum, the whole idea of Brexit, of a British exit from the European Union, which you so strongly backed, is turning out to be a bit of a disaster, isn't it?
It's proving to be difficult to implement. I wholly accept that, but I never thought it would be easy to implement. I still believe that it is the right thing for this country to do. You say the country is deeply divided. A country is always divided, and a country is always divided at election time. It's interesting, though, that 85% of voters voted for parties that endorsed the Brexit process. Brexit is a process, and it was endorsed by 85% of voters' parties.
That is a very fair point, but of course they don't agree, those parties, on how Brexit should happen. There's a great deal of talk about hard Brexit versus soft Brexit. For the benefit of our global audience, a hard Brexit being a complete withdrawal from the EU single market, from jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice, from the customs union. That is what Theresa May says she wants. That's what she went to the polls to get a mandate for. Given she lost seats and couldn't win a majority, the Tory party, the Conservative government, have lost a mandate for hard Brexit, haven't they?
No, I don't. You know, you use the term hard Brexit. A lot of people use it without ever defining it. I can think of 3 or 4 different definitions of it. The formal position of the Labour Party, and I assume they believe in what is their former position, is identical to that of the Conservative Party. It is withdrawal from the single market and control of immigration. So if you're defining a hard Brexit as withdrawal from the single market and control over our own borders,
and the customs union.
From the Labour
Hold on,
Party
the Labour Party does not support a full withdrawal from the customs union, as you know.
Well, they don't have to go together. You can have one without the other. Look, a hard Brexit can...
What do you
support? Give you several definitions.
No, forget the several definitions. What's your definition? What would you like to see happen?
I would like to see a deal reached by agreement with the EU. Some people's definition of a hard Brexit is not what you've mentioned. Some people say a hard Brexit is when we have no deal. If that's a definition of a hard Brexit, it's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a deal by agreement in which we would have a free trade agreement. We would also have control over our borders. I think we would probably be outside the customs union.
Isn't the fact that you say there are several definitions of a hard Brexit further evidence that people voted in a referendum last summer and in a general election this year without really knowing what's on offer? The people like yourself who were offering Brexit never really defined the terms.
Well, I try not to use phrases like a hard Brexit or a soft Brexit. There are many complexities in any election. I mean, if you think of any general election, people have to vote on maybe 7 or 8 salient issues. You can never say definitively what the public voted for or what the public voted against unless you actually manage to do an opinion poll of every single member of the public. You know, governments have to interpret the results of an election.
OK, well, a new poll out this week shows only 43% of the people say the government should continue with Brexit on its current negotiating terms. Last month, Theresa May tweeted, "If I lose just 6 seats, I will lose this election and Jeremy Corbyn will be sitting down to negotiate with Europe." She lost 13 seats. So how can you say that her position isn't going to change, shouldn't have to change, given on her own definition she can't continue on with those same negotiating terms? She shouldn't even be there.
Yeah, but we have a system in this country, an electoral system, winner takes all. It is the government who wins the election, who has the majority in the House of Commons, that decides what is it in the interest of the country. I'm not disputing that, but her words, Norman Lamont. No, but Mehdi Hassan, the fact that there was a swing against the government, although the government eventually emerges as the winner of the election, albeit not on very good terms, does not mean that the Prime Minister can't do what she wanted or the Prime Minister can't be the head of the government. Obviously, it is wise to take account of other opinions, to hear what the other side say. Nobody is against that, but at the end of the day, decisions have to be made, and the only people who can do that are the government.
No one's saying she shouldn't be Prime Minister, Norman Lamont. What I was saying is that she said herself, if I lose just 6 seats, I will lose this election and Jeremy Corbyn will be sitting down to negotiate with Europe. Now, she'll still be sitting down to negotiate with Europe, and all I'm saying is, how can she carry on with the same negotiating position and expect anyone, either at home or abroad, to take her seriously? On her own terms, she has lost authority.
I think the Prime Minister accepts that her reputation and her standing has been damaged, and that of the Conservative Party by the election. It was not a good result. She lost more than 6 seats, but she still won the election. I mean, it's rather like, a football match. You may have 2 teams, and one team is expected to win 10-0, and it actually ends up being a score draw. And then in the penalty shootout, the team that was expected to win narrowly wins. That's more or less what has happened.
Do you really think the new president of France, Emmanuel Macron, Angela Merkel, long-standing chancellor of Germany, do you think they're really going to take her seriously when she comes along to make her demands at the negotiations next week, given how badly she's done in this election, given how she lost her mandate in many ways?
Well, I don't think, whether or not she's got a mandate will have anything to do with it in their eyes. They are rational people. And things that are in the interests, things that are a cost to the UK are also a cost to the EU. Trade is not a form of warfare, it's a form of cooperation. And continuing that cooperation between neighbours is extremely important within the right framework. And You know, the Europeans have said repeatedly, despite some other rhetoric, that, I mean, Mr. Barnier, for example, has said, failure to get a deal would indeed be failure. We need a deal. Both sides need a deal.
He is the chief EU negotiator. Already since the referendum, the pound has taken a dive. Inflation is up. Real wages have fallen. The UK has gone from being one of the fastest growing economies in the G7 to now being the slowest. And that's just while waiting for Brexit to happen. You were quite relaxed when we last spoke last year about the economic consequences of leaving the EU. Do you still feel relaxed?
I think the consequences of Britain leaving the EU, provided we have a satisfactory negotiation, will be ones that will not be unfavourable. I believe the long-run effect of withdrawing will be good for the country. I certainly don't think it will be bad for the country. I think it will not actually make as dramatic a difference as people think. I do think, given the uncertainty, and I've been saying this for some time, I do think that the actual process of negotiation may lead to, I think it will lead to some slowdown in the UK economy, because while this is going on, people making investment decisions may not be quite sure of how the geography of the European economy is going to look like in 2 years' time. That is understandable, but it is copable with.
Theresa May has said that no deal would be better than a bad deal. A, do you agree with that? And B, how worried are you about the prospects of no deal, of Britain crashing out of the EU without an agreement in place?
Well, as I've already said, I favour a deal. I don't want to have no deal. I don't want to walk away. And I think only very few people want to do that. But I think it's perfectly rational to say no deal is better than a bad deal. That's not the first choice. But if driven to it, Britain's got to be prepared to say that. Otherwise, we would have no leverage in the negotiations.
And given what's happened over the past year, how worried are you that we will have to walk away with no deal? We will have to crash out on our own terms?
I believe that 2 years is quite a long time. I believe that agreement can be reached in 2 years, and I hope it is. I think it's in the interests of Europe. I don't wish to see the European Union split up. I understand their concerns, but I think it's in their interests and our interests that we continue to trade. Trade is a good basis on which to build friendship and cooperation. And cooperation also in security matters, foreign affairs. Britain is going to have, I believe, a continuing close relationship with the EU. It just won't be based on the EU law structure that it has been in the past.
Norman Lamont, thanks for joining me on UpFront.
Thank you.